Welcome to Wisdom of the World. Today I'm going to tell a story about fairness, and it's a story from Burma, what is called now Myanmar. And it's called Three Women and One Man. And it goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a father and a mother who had one son. The boy was a very good-looking boy, nice boy, intelligent boy. And he came from a fairly wealthy family, and his life would have been, okay, normal, if you wish, if he hadn't been terribly afraid of snakes. Even a tiny little snake, he was afraid of, and at night he always dreamt that he was chased by a cobra or a viper, and they always caught him in his dream and they bit him. His parents thought that maybe marriage would help him, but it didn't really. He always complained to his wife and said that one day he would be bitten by a snake and she would find him dead. And he had only one wish. He says, please don't cremate me, but put me on a raft, a raft, and then float me down the river. So one day, indeed, his wife heard an incredible, terrible scream, and she found him laying motionless in the grass, and she saw a venomous viper slipping away. And so she figured he was dead, and she called a carpenter to at least honor her dead husband's last wishes. And so a lot of tears and crying, the husband was put onto the river on a raft and was floated down the river. So he floated down the river, and a little downstream, a snake charmer lived with his three daughters. And those daughters were swimming at that very moment, and the oldest daughter actually spotted the raft, and they said, "Hey, here's a raft with a corpse on it." And the middle sister pulled with all her might, pulled that raft from the river to the side of the river, and the third, the youngest sister, went to call her father. So the father inspected the corpse and saw the snake bite and said to his daughters, "This man is not dead, I can revive him." So they drug him out into the hut of the snake charmer, and he sucked out the bite of the snake, and he put some herbs on it, and sure enough, the man slowly came back alive. And then after a while, he was just fine. And it happened that all the three daughters, just in one go, fell in love with the same man. Now, the oldest said, "I'm the one who spotted him, so I should be the one who gets to marry him." And the second one said, "Well, if it wasn't for me just actually pulling him along, we would have never gotten him, so I'm the one that should be able to marry him." And the youngest daughter said, "No, that's nonsense. If it wasn't for me, he would have never, I called our father, and he would have never been, healed and cured." And they argued and they argued and they argued, and then finally the older sister said, "Stop the arguing. There's loads of other guys around here in our area. Just let him go." The middle sister agreed with that, but the younger sister said, "No, if none of us can marry him, then no one can marry him." And she slipped sort of a magical yellow ribbon onto his ankle, and the man just at once turned into a parrot, a beautiful parrot, and he flew away. Now, as a parrot, he was looking for food, and he chanced upon the king's garden, which had lots of beautiful flowers in it, and he was picking those flowers. The gardener was furious and tried to throw stones at him, but wasn't very good at that. but eventually actually sort of trapped him, brought him to the king, and asked the king's permission to kill this bird. But the king liked this beautiful bird and says, just give me a beautiful golden cage. And he presented the beautiful parrot in the cage as a present to his daughter. Now, his daughter was extremely bored, always in her lavish tower where she lived, and she loved this parrot. She taught him some tricks, so he would come, on her sit on her hand, and she taught him a few words. And so she spent a lot of time with him, and she liked it. And then she saw this little yellow ribbon on his foot, and then she just was curious about it and untied it. And at that same moment, the parrot transformed in the handsome young man that he was before. Now, this guy, him and the princess, also fell in love right away. And so they had, let's say, a month-long love affair. And finally, the chambermaids got a bit curious, and they looked through the keyhole and they saw a man in the princess's chamber. And they were so surprised, and their cries of surprise echoed through the palace walls, and the guards who were always there sprang into action, and they were ready to kill an intruder. So they came into the princess's bedroom, and she had already tied the ribbon again to the man's ankle, and he was a bird. So they only found the princess and the bird, but the bird was quite agitated, and he was also afraid of all the soldiers that were getting in. So he, with loud shrieks, he got away, and he flew through the window. Now, all that would have been fine if it hadn't if it weren't the case that the little yellow ribbon that he had under his ankle got caught on the window. And so he became, while he was flying out, he became a young man again, and he fell down the bushes and somehow landed and still lived. And he opened his eyes, and he heard and he saw the soldiers approaching from below to catch him. And he jumped and he leapt up and he ran away as fast as he could. Now, he was quite a good run. He could run quite fast, but the pursuers, the soldiers were, they were unrelenting. They just slowly were catching up with him as he was losing his energy. And as he was running and running, he was looking for a place to hide, and he saw a villa a little further on, and he went into that villa, and he burst in there. He opened the door and he said, you have to help me. The king's soldiers are after me, but I have done nothing wrong. Now, the merchant knew the king wasn't always right, so he said to the young man, he says, don't worry, just sit down at our table and just, eat with us and pretend to be part of our family. So just a little later, the soldiers came in and they said, we are looking for somebody. He's gone into this house. You must have seen him. And the merchant said, no, we have not seen anything. But please, you're welcome to look at our house everywhere, and just let my wife, my daughter, and my son-in-law and myself finish our dinner in peace. So the soldiers hadn't seen his face, so they didn't recognize him. So they looked everywhere, couldn't find him. Finally apologized to the merchants and left, looking elsewhere for him. The daughter and the young man also loved each other. And the daughter so much wanted to marry him, asked her parents for their approval, and she was their only daughter, so they were inclined to say yes, and the young man did not object, so a couple of days later they were married. In the meantime, the princess was not eating, not speaking, not drinking, and she became very ill. none of the doctors which the king summoned could heal her. They didn't know what was the matter with her. And then finally the king spoke to her alone and says, my daughter, you're the most precious thing that I have. For me, you're everything. Is there anything I can do for you? And then the princess broke down and told her father the whole story. The king knew just what to do, and he asked the royal theater to put up a performance, and he invited all the leading families and nobles and told that anybody who doesn't come will face a severe punishment. So the theater performance was on, and the princess went through all the aisles, and it didn't take very long before she found her lover and his new bride. And the princess said to the bride, you stole my man. And the bride said, well, I think he left you. And at that same moment, there was the other woman, the first wife, and says, that is my dead husband. I thought he was dead. He belongs to me. And so these three women were all arguing about who was the rightful wife to this man. Now, the discussions went on, and they became quite loud and wild, and the king called upon the highest judge in the country to take on the case. So the judge listened carefully to everybody and considered the matter and then gave his decision. He said the first wife thought the husband was dead and then sent him away, gave him to the river, and at that moment her marriage stopped being valid. The second one, the princess, yes, she lifted the curse for him, and they had a month-long sort of marriage-like relationship, but she did not protect him against the soldiers of her father who were out to kill him, capture him and kill him. So she also has no claim. But the third wife actually gave him sanctuary and protected him against the soldiers that were out to capture him. And so, because she gave him refuge and sanctuary, she is his rightful wife. Fair? Not fair? You may decide. I think that's a fair decision. And fairness in our world, when there is peace, I guess, fairness rules. Thank you.